everyone. This is Adam. Welcome to episode 7 of For What It's Worth, the podcast where I talk to people with interesting hobbies, opinions, and takes on anything and everything. Today, my friend Ivan Peña. He's a father of twin 5-year-old girls, a marketer, a musician, a lover of podcasting, and much more. Ivan joined me today from Dunedin, Florida, which made him the very first international guest on For What It's Worth, which was kind of cool. And we got to talking about a whole whack of stuff. Parenting, especially girls, the awesomeness of women, the importance of family, Ivan's musical projects, podcasting, and much more. I hope you enjoy. Drop me a line, let me know what you think. And remember to visit us at FWIWpodcast.net, where you can find our RSS feed and other information. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter at facebook.com/FWIWpodcast and twitter.com/FWIWpodcast. You can also find us in your usual podcast channels, iTunes, Stitcher, Player.fm, etc. One more thing. See if you can notice the clock striking 11 as we wax poetic about honoring our veterans and Veterans Day and Remembrance Day. That was an oversight on my part. Should have thought about that beforehand. Anyway, mad respect to all the men and women in uniform. Today it was Remembrance Day, today is Remembrance Day, and we honor you. And you can hear me well?
Very well.
Very cool. All right. So how were the Veterans Day celebrations?
It was awesome. The school the girls go to is very patriotic.
Okay.
Which is kind of interesting, you know. And they had family members and friends who were in the military. They were, honoring them, and all the kids made, these speeches, and it was a lot of, patriotic American, gratitude, I guess. It's really nice.
That's the thing. To a Canadian, an outsider, we sort of think that everyone is patriotic in that way, but you said that their school is particularly so.
Yeah, it just seems to be that, again, yeah, it's a big country and there's a lot of different pockets of people and doing different things, but it feels like, there's an overall, I don't want to say shying away or reduction in that kind of sentiment, but it just feels like it's very pronounced with this school. I don't know. They're very proud of their heritage, and that's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is actually, so we're celebrating what we call Remembrance Day, which is a Commonwealth country's, basically celebrating the same thing. Yep. We call it something different, but it's sort of one of the few days that we get really patriotic, which we're not really known for. Mm-hmm. And it's really nice. We still haven't made it an official national holiday. It's sort of it is a holiday in about 6 provinces right now. Mm-hmm. But you definitely get that feel, which is a little bit more unusual for us, I think. But that's neat. And how did so your girls are how old now?
They are 5. They'll be 6 next month.
Oh, right, because they're twins, right?
They're twin girls.
So what are they at 5? What does all this mean to them? Like, how do they sort of receive it, and what do they think about it?
They don't get a lot, obviously, of the details as to why people go to wars and why people have to fight, but they are they call them heroes whenever they see anybody in uniform, whether it's a military person or a policeman. They feel like that uniform, signifies like somebody who's looking out for your best interest, and that's pretty much what they get from it right now. So
it's pretty cool that they're able to meet. Like you said, they had veterans come in and stuff like that, so they get to meet those people in real life. Yeah,
it's great. There were some people in uniform, some grandparents there that fought in Vietnam. It was just nice. It's just good to see. Kids, I think overall, is that kids just need to appreciate what they have. I feel like they need to just be grateful and try to understand some of the sacrifices that, their parents and grandparents and great grandparents have made. Overall, that's not just an American thing. Obviously, that's every country, every culture, expressing your gratitude over something is always important, I think. So
yeah, for sure. And I feel like, I don't know if you agree, but it seems to me like in North America, for most of the year, we sort of forget about the older folks and the things that they have done for us, whether it's your grandmother or your grandfather or the veterans or whatever. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but I feel like, especially in popular culture, we don't like to talk about the old. We maybe make fun of them a little bit. I think we could afford to do more to sort of recognize them.
I agree. I think youth is wasted on the young.
I was just using that quote the other day. I got to look up who said that. I'm going to do that right now. But yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, I wish it's almost like it should be a Benjamin Button thing,
Yeah, exactly. But let's see here. George Bernard Shaw.
Oh,
there
cool.
you go. So. Yeah, I know. And this, you kind of realize that as you get older. Like, I think you look back to your teen years, and wouldn't it be great to sort of be able to have that as your present at your retirement? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Cool. Hey, well, listen, thanks a lot for coming on. I'm really excited.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
You are the very first international guest on my podcast, so
yes,
great grateful for that. From sunny Florida. It's funny, like, to me, Florida is always in my mind exists as a place where it's like, like I've been on vacation with my parents when I was a kid. It was great. It's this idea of a vacation spot, of like a fun spot to visit. But it's such a, like, for you living there, does it get sort of, do you no longer sort of see those things like having Disney World right there for your kids, all that stuff? Does it sort of become every day to you?
No way. It's awesome, actually. If anything, I feel more, I feel more excited that I'm only an hour and a half away from Disney, because, it's a little paradise, a short drive away, Florida is beautiful. I mean, even though, I live where people come vacation, it never feels like a chore. There's like everywhere, wherever you live, there's always days that you wish you were somewhere else.
Yeah, for sure.
But overall, I mean, it's nice. It's hot. I mean, I've been in this part of the world, in the tropics all my life. So I don't know what it's like to live with underground cities and 6 feet of snow and having to de-ice your car and all those great things you have to put up with up there in the Great White North.
Were you born there in Florida? In Dunedin?
No, actually, no. I was born in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic.
Hence I was going to ask you about your last name, Peña.
Peña, yep.
Very cool. So, and then how old were you when you guys moved?
We moved when I was 13.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm mostly an American now.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you speak English when you came over?
I did. I had a steady diet of TV and music that helped me really learn the language and come in without much of an accent. So it was always a nice bonus. Definitely watching a lot of HBO growing up. A lot of I don't know if you guys had it in Canada, but that Saved by the Bell show.
Oh, yes.
Remember that one?
Yeah, our generations, that's probably our generation's like number one TV show, I would guess.
Yeah. I used to watch Degrassi too back then, but I wasn't as into it.
Uh-huh. I never really got into it either, but Saved by the Bell, I think I must have seen every single episode.
Twice, at least. At least twice. So imagine my surprise when I moved here and life was nothing like that.
Right. But hold on a second. You mean to tell me that you were able to get pretty much, you were fluent in English just by watching the shows and listening to music?
Yeah, believe it or not. I mean, not only that, but in Dominican, it's there's bilingual schools. There's you're immersed in a different kind of environment, right? Like you do get exposed to English a lot. There's a lot of English influence. There's a lot of words, and I've been to the States before too, so it wasn't like it was a complete shock. Mm-hmm. But I always had a pretty good mastery on the language. Kind of came easy to me, so it wasn't a big stretch, and it definitely helped out when I moved here because I had friends who weren't as fluent or as they couldn't communicate as well, and they definitely had a harder time. Mm-hmm. So definitely I was thankful for that. So whatever it was, but I mean it was a steady diet of HBO. And because I learned a lot of things that maybe I shouldn't have learned when I was like 8 or 9 years old watching HBO shows. But between that and music, I remember I used to just sit around, listen to Guns N' Roses and listen to all this awesome music coming from the States, and I would just read the lyrics and I would transcribe the lyrics and I would just like practice them. So I feel like that was Yeah.
Sorry, and so you're now bilingual, right? You speak Spanish.
Yep, I do. Yeah.
How prevalent is it in Florida? There must be a lot of Spanish speakers there.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of Hispanic descendants as well. So there's that mix and that acceptance for the language, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I wish we were doing a better job with the girls though, because my wife is not bilingual. She's not, she's American. And I try to kind of bring in the language, and my family's always like, oh, this is the time for them to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I try, but beyond counting and buenos dias and buenas noches, gracias, your caballo, like standard stuff,
Mm-hmm.
animals and numbers and pleasantries. It's been hard, but they at least they're aware of it, and they kind of get the sounds, so it's a nice advantage for them.
Besides yourself, do they have anyone else that can speak to them in Spanish?
My mom and my dad, but they don't live here with us, so it's not like they have somebody around all the time that they can just listen to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sort of in the same boat. I've been trying to get in as much Polish as I can with my kids. My wife is very, very helpful. She herself has picked up a lot, but it's not the same, as if somebody's immersed, right? You get the. I like what you said. Numbers, animals, and pleasantries. My biggest hope right now is that they'll be able to understand as much of it as possible, and then beyond that, my parents help out a little bit. But have you ever thought about structured learning, like putting them in some sort of a language school?
Not really. Yeah, I mean, we've thought about sending them to spend the summers down in Dominican with my family. I think that's probably a better education. I think the minute that you start forcing it on them like that in an environment, I think it might lose some of its effectiveness. But that said, I can't wait for them to have the option to learn Spanish in school, so that we can use that as a kind of an anchor. I think they understand some of it. They get the sounds, which is kind of the hardest part, rolling your R's and understanding the vowel sounds. So chalk that up to not being able to check that one off the box there. But I think that they'll learn enough to understand and to be conversational, at least, I think.
How does that look like in the school system? You said that there's going to be an opportunity for them to get some of that in school.
Yeah, they teach them usually Spanish. I think it's later on in elementary school they might be able to start taking some Spanish classes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm trying. I'm racking my brain how to get the language, how to get them closer to the language. I was put through the sort of Saturday language school system here. It was a drag when I was a kid, for sure. It was always like, why can't I stay home and watch cartoons like the other kids? But looking back at it, I think it helped me. I now I'm able to still communicate with my grandmothers who are both still in Poland and stuff like that. So I appreciated it.
So you were born in Canada or in Poland?
I was born in Poland. I was 8 when we moved.
Right on.
Yeah, and my brother was 5. We sort of switched over to English right away, though, and it was the same thing, TV and, in our case, friends in school. I mean, you go to school, and for a kid, it's like you don't even know when, and you're speaking English.
Yeah.
And then when everything on TV is in English, and, of course, as a kid, you're loving all those shows, you're just eating it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway... So cool. So 2 girls. That's what you and I originally got talking about, how I still think about this a lot because they're still young, right? Even yours at 5, they're still essentially like babies, right?
Yeah.
My girl's 3, but it's the same thing. Like right now it's still like a kid, a baby, but more and more I find myself thinking about, what's it going to be like to raise a girl, and, you kind of get, I guess I get a little bit of stories from my wife and she remembers her childhood and stuff, but I still feel like it's kind of a big responsibility.
I agree. I'm the oldest of 8 siblings, and I grew up with 4 boys, essentially, out of those 8. And I don't know what to do with a woman and not in a sexual way. You know what I mean? Like, I know It sounds really weird, but the hardest part for me was kind of getting over that. It's like realizing that, that we're different. We have different machinery down there, and it's just you clean it differently. You know what I mean? Like those kind of things that I guess are very intimate, and it really is what really was the hardest part for me to get over. But other than that, man, I love having girls. I mean, And I don't really treat them like girls. Sure, we do have our, princess time. And they, ask me to paint their nails and put their hair up in a ponytail or something. But I think, I treat them like my buddies. I make him watch Star Wars. I'm making him, which I guess doesn't matter since Princess Leia is a Disney princess now. So I guess that's okay. But yeah, I try to get him into music. I take him in the garage and we play drums now. They're learning drums now. They're taking drum classes.
Have you come up against this sort of like, oh, daddy, but that's for boys? Or like, has that ever come up in school or with friends?
Yeah, I think they take care of that themselves, as far as the things that they feel are more girly or more, boyish. But when it comes to music and it comes to the stuff that we do together, they've never really expressed that gender difference. I think that there's enough female musicians out there that they see. They love the pop singers like Taylor Swift and Katy Perry and those types. So to them, if anything, women belong in music more than men do. And the reason men do is because their daddy does it. So
right. So it sounds like you guys didn't really go out of your way since they were born to, sort of not let them play with princesses I ask because, there's a lot of opinion on this now, and there's a lot of people that take a very hard stance around that. They're afraid of, just saying, okay, you can play with dolls, but don't play with this or something like that. But
I think that's...
Yeah,
no,
sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you weren't too concerned about it. Like, you seem to have a pretty balanced, approach to it. You're not too worried about it. At the same time, you want to make them understand that they, everything's for everybody. And there's no such thing as a girly activity or a boyish activity. But you don't really seem too bothered by it. Like some people would, like, oh, society's trying to make them, into Disney princesses, blah, blah, blah.
I think that the energy that you waste trying to fight the norms and what's out there, I think you can redirect that energy to something positive, right? So don't get me wrong. I am a firm believer, that we are two genders with two different preferences, with whether not necessarily a sexual preference or anything like that, just mostly we are two different pieces in this symbiotic machine. Men need women. Men and women need men for biological reasons, for emotional reasons, right? So there's a difference, and I want them to always understand that there's a difference between men and women. However, that doesn't mean that there has to be a difference in what you do, what you enjoy. If you want to play video games and you want to be a drummer, that's cool. You want to dress up like a princess and you want to learn how to, play with your easy bake ovens and make some cupcakes because that's what girls do, then that's fine. I don't think there needs to be that harsh line in the sand drawn to say you must be girly or you can't be girly. I think that's just, I think it's just the nature of the gender. You got to do what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. No, I like that, and I like what you said. That we are different. You're never going to get around that. What I always think about is the major difference, or one of the major differences, is the fact that women give birth to children, right? Mm-hmm. And you can't get away from the fact that biologically, babies need their mothers, babies need women, and I feel like as a society, we're sort of still struggling with that. Because of equality, because we want everybody to be equal and have the same opportunities to, for example, grow their careers, right? What do you think about that? How do you like how your country has set that up right now for women? And would you change anything?
I think men have been trying for thousands of years to equal out the balance of power, right? Women are the life givers and the providers in the beginning, and men have been trying to do everything they can to kind of take the power back the rest of the time, it feels like, right? But I think it's
an interesting perspective.
Right. It's true. Women, are awesome. And I mean that in the most, literal and biblical sense of that word. They really are. And, I don't know. I think that, again, my perspective is very, different than a lot of your typical Americans, I guess you could say. I born in a Hispanic society, and raised in that kind of society, Catholic-based Hispanic society where, the male tends to be it's a kind of, not a chauvinist, but it's a male-centric thing, right? Like the man provides and the man takes care of you, Not that my parents were like that. They were pretty progressive as far as that goes, but it's just what's around you, right? Like there's a reason why there's that machismo stereotype to go along with that. So, I did grow up believing that, a man doesn't hit a woman. A man doesn't take advantage of a woman. A man respects a woman. And whether that translates to honoring their wishes, if my wife, I'm thankful that my wife wanted to stay home with the girls. But if she wanted to work equally, then she totally could have done that. I mean, it's not like it has to be that way. I'm thankful because I have my wife raising our kids as opposed to a stranger in a daycare or something like that. But I think that that does, again, I'm a very laid back person, so I don't think that you need to put so much stress fighting something. Don't put too much energy fighting something negative. And just do what feels right to you. If you as a parent feel like you want to stay home with your kid, then it should be easy for you to do that, or it should be easier, or at least there needs to be some consideration there. But if you don't, and you feel like you need to go back to work and focus on a career, it should also be easy to do that. And I remember in one of your previous podcasts, the one about the three Canadians walk into a bar, the voting episode. How the daycare issue came up and how it's expensive to put kids in daycare, and I think it would be interesting if as a society as a whole people made it more affordable and easier to be able to share those responsibilities. I just think the society makes it too black and white, too much of a political issue when it really is a family situation, and it'd be great to make it easier. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think it really rests with the family. I mean, the family is important to me. To me, the family is the basic unit of society. Mm-hmm. And without a strong foundation and understanding and just being cool with what you decide to do, or setting your family up in the best way you can afford to do and the best way possible, then if you don't have that, then the rest is kind of fucked, really.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. And I sort of come from a very similar background in the traditions and in the way that males and females are viewed. I think that we all have a lot of room and leeway to set these things up and act in the way that we want to act within our families, but then we very quickly come up against the rules and laws of the society in which we live in, right? So for example, correct me if I'm wrong, but maternity leave in the United States is somewhere around 3 months, is it?
It varies where you live. I think it's as little as 6 weeks and as much as 3 or 6 months in some places. I think like California gives you a super long maternity leave.
And so that's what gets me thinking, are we happy with the systems in place for women to have the time to not have to make too much of a sacrifice if they want to continue a career down the road? My wife is like yours. She decided she wanted to stay home, at least for now, to take care of the kids while they're this young. And I, like you, am very happy with that. I love not ever having to worry about whether my kids are well taken care of. I know they are. But like you said, that's a choice, right? I think women are in a very interesting situation, and it's it's really tough for women in a lot of ways, and this is just one of them. But it seems like in terms of when they do have kids, there is two major areas that come into play. One is the legal and societal area, where it's like, okay, how much maternity leave am I going to get? What is this going to mean to my career? A lot of these trade-offs that they have to make. And then there's also other women and perceptions and expectations. And I've sort of, obviously I'm a man looking in, but I've heard enough from my wife and I sort of observed that it is tough. I mean, they face a lot of criticism sometimes from other women, who believe staunchly in, whether it's women's rights, again, that equality in the boardroom and things like that, breastfeeding, like all these things are choices that they make, and they are judged on these choices by other women. and there's a lot of very strong opinions, and it's just sometimes, and the best is if you have a very supportive family and a circle of friends and everything like that. But some women are at a real loss, and they really, they find it very hard to make all these choices. Like, it's not easy to be a woman, especially when it comes to these things, it seems.
I agree. I mean, and again, like you said, like a man looking in. I just think I don't think it's fair. I think that people should let people do what they want to do. I think, it's a choice. You want to work hard and be in the CEO of a company. That's great. If you don't want to have a family, that's great. If you want to have a family and do it both, that's great too. You can make it all work. And who says that, being successful in a career has to be the pinnacle of anybody's life? Maybe it's just raising your family and make sure whether that means a man and the woman having a more active role, because that's the thing. It's like the burden and the blame goes to the mother. But you know what? The fathers are empowered to do this too, and you can be at home and you don't have to be a workaholic, and you don't have to, that's all those things are choices. I know that, we say, sometimes the choices are harder than others, and then sometimes circumstances are, more difficult than others. But I think that, as a family, you make that decision, and, whether it's a man and a woman, and two men, two women, whatever you decide, it's the stability and the dedication that you bring to the table is what's going to help that little human take that forward to his or her situation. So if you're not teaching them love, if you're not teaching them security, if you're not teaching them that it's not a chore to be a parent, right? That it's not like, oh, you ruined my life. I got to take care of you. I need to pay for you.
Right.
I birthed you. It can't be that. I mean, I think it's that simple. It's like, it shouldn't be a government telling you that you need to have 6 weeks for your kid. It should be kind of an understood thing that if you want to take some time off to be with your kid when they're born, especially if it's your first kid or second kid, it shouldn't be a big deal. And it shouldn't mean that you have to choose between your family and your career. I just think that, again, a lot of energy goes into these lines in the sand. And I think as a free society that places value on human, intellectual capital, we should be able to kind of move past that. I mean, I go to today, when I usually stay home, I always take the kids to school, and it's 70% women that are bringing the kids to school, that are involved with the teachers and the parent-teacher association, and that's kind of sad, because who says, why can't there be more men doing that? Why does it have to be the mom? Why does it have to be that? And I get it. In some situations, it just works out that way, but.
I think you made some awesome, interesting points. For example, the fact that men getting more involved and not being a workaholic, for example, it just seems like there's very little. There doesn't seem to be many men that publicly at least take pride in that. Men's successes are often judged on their salaries and their positions and stuff like that. We are seeing more and more of men take responsibility, and today's average father is doing much more with their kids and is taking much more responsibility in the home than he did 50 years ago. But still, it seems like women take more pride in that, that their kids are, well dressed and well fed and well taken care of and stuff like that. But it not that men don't, but I think is it more removed? Like, I'm the breadwinner, so I go out and I make the money so that my family is taken care of. But then I'm not, I'm not going to, many men won't be like, well, I'm so proud of the fact that I'm home every day at 5:30 or 6 o'clock so that I can spend a good amount of time with my kids. Or am I wrong?
No, I think it should be that way. I mean, I think you're right.
And I wonder, like, again, is that just going back to these original roles that, men and women played? And still, I think in general, we should do more to recognize men and women who do all those things. Because I look now at my own kids and my own family, and I'm so grateful for all the things that my wife does. And I know that a whole lot of women are doing the same thing. Your wife, others, staying home, taking care of the kids. Those are tough jobs, and those sacrifices and those things that they do are actually, the benefits are probably immeasurable, because studies have shown, first X years of life, most important, formative, et cetera, et cetera. So how important is it? how much value are these women mostly bringing to society by doing all of that, right? But yet I feel like, save for Mother's Day or something like that, and there, other occasions that we as families decide are important, women especially, and men who do this, they don't get recognized as much as they should, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think, not to get too, high and mighty, but I think as a society that kind of, I based on my perceptions and my upbringing, and I feel like overall the value of the family unit is kind of gone down a bit. And I get it that there's a lot of single parents out there that don't have the luxury of spending the kind of time with their kids and really making it about quality and doing these things. I get that, and it's easier for some people. I mean, I'm thankful, blessed, whatever you want to call it, that I have been able to set up my life in a certain way. But it's tough. But that's to me the biggest single contribution you can bring to the table as a human is to develop another excellent human that does the same thing, and being successful at work and closing a deal and being up for the year and doing all this stuff is great. But end of the day, who's going to be there to take care of you when you're older? Did you raise somebody who's going to do that? Did you raise somebody who's not going to hate you when they're a teenager automatically because you're a hard ass? I mean, did you raise somebody who respects you and learned something valuable from you and learned, loyalty and the importance of family and enough to want to do that themselves? So to me, that's worth more. And I get it. It's easier said than done. And we're sitting here, two professional guys that probably work a lot more than they should, and do a lot of things that, that do take away from that. But overall, that's what I do it for. If I didn't have a family, I'd still be a musician, barely making money, So I think it's the most important thing, the most important contribution, and women should never sell that short, because the time that they're putting in to raise that kid right, to make sure they're dressed right, to make sure that they're eating right, to take them to school, to pick them up, take them to activities, that is the most valuable prize of all, is that you have that well-adjusted. Doesn't even have to be well-adjusted, just that human that gets it, that had that, that had the love. I don't know. Maybe that's idealistic, but I do believe that. I
agree with you on this one. And again, maybe it's because we're speaking from, positions of privilege, from having, loving families and growing up. And it sounds like you also grew up in a family where you had a mother and a father. And so we have that take on things. But I think, and I don't have any of these in front of me right now, but I'm fairly certain I've seen enough studies that, point out that there are best sort of ways to go about things. Like, the person that is well-adjusted and that goes on to have a good emotional intelligence and stuff like that, they are coming out of environments which are exactly like you were describing, loving, supportive, involved, where their parents are involved and stuff like that. So I think, you mentioned something that was very interesting earlier. We are in a society where we have a lot of single parents. There's very different makeups of families all over the place. And I think we need to be careful to remember that everyone is equal and everyone should be respected, and everybody's situation is different. But I think when you look at certain things, there's always sort of a situation or things that you can do that are best for your children, right? It's like studies are showing that breastfeeding is best for your child. Yeah. And those, we now have to have that battle, like, this has to be now, or almost marketing has to step in and take care of this now, because, various things, again, people's shortage of time, companies that make formula, stuff like that, have gotten us to a point where it's a real battle, right? But what's best for the child is breastfeeding. So yes, different situations have to be respected, and not everybody is the same, but we have to keep in mind, and we have to tell others and educate people that certain things should be, we should strive for certain things.
Yeah, that I agree. I mean, breastfeeding is nature's, source of food. There's a reason why we're mammals and we operate how we are. Just plop that baby on that boob and let it have that milk. There's a reason why. It's a reason why it's there. So it's a free resource that is available to you usually. I mean, if some women have that difficulty, but for me, like, interesting. It's like a couple of things is I know that I'm preaching this family structure, but I came from a divorced family, and from when we moved to the States, it was with my mom and her new husband. So I was like, my family was separated. People make bad choices on both sides. It's not like I have this, idealistic view of what a family is. It's just, but I still felt loved. I still felt supported. Me and my mom didn't come to my swimming meets, and they didn't come to all these activities that I was doing, like some of these hyper parents do now. Like, you have to be there for everything. But you know what? It's okay. I didn't need that. And it was enough for me to always have that safety net and that support. And it was always very clear what was expected from me. And, and I always felt like I had room to fail. And I always felt like I had room to ask questions. And my dad is one of my best friends. I do things with my dad that I don't do with some friends. You know what I mean? Like, and my mom is also one of my best friends. I can talk to her about anything. So, I just kind of wanted to make that point there. But yeah, I mean, it's, for us, having twin girls was really taxing on my wife's body. I mean, she, 10 days after the girls were born, she had to go back to the hospital because she was hemorrhaging really bad. So for those first 10 days, breast milk constantly. It was like my wife was a dairy cow, pumping out that milk, at, peak production level. But she went to the hospital and, she had a hemorrhage and she had an infection. She essentially was in the hospital for a few days. And during that time, I mean, she really couldn't breastfeed, right? So at that point, we didn't have a choice. We had to switch over to formula. And it was what happened. Did we have a plan and we were going to breastfeed as long as we could? Yeah, of course. But, it's not like it had to be a mandatory thing. And we have to, again, a lot of energy goes towards that negative intent, right? That, oh, we have to stick to the plan. We have to do this. No, you don't have to do anything. All you have to do is care for that kid and make sure that kid is healthy and happy. And you know what? Abbott Labs, thank you very much for a great product. I spent a lot of money on your product. I am currently a stock owner because of that. But do I push that on people? No, I don't care. You do what's right for you. Use that breast milk. It's free. It's there. It's organic. It is locally sourced. All those all those buzzwords you want to use. It's coming from your mom, from the boob right there. Do it. You know what I mean? And it's great. Women, it's great for weight loss. It's a great way to lose weight. Women feel self-conscious about gaining weight when they're pregnant. Man, breastfeeding is a great way to burn those calories. So, I don't know.
Sounds like a good marketing campaign right there.
Yeah, there you go. Do we work in marketing? Is that why? Is that what it is?
Like the company you just mentioned, Abbott Labs. If you're interested, we're here.
Yeah, we'll take your money. Give me back some of that money.
There you go. I like your approach because it's what you're saying is not to get militant one way or the other, which is cool. I think I like that. I personally maybe get too, because I see things happening and I like to, I'm opinionated and I sort of maybe go too hard in one way. And you're right. Like when I was growing up, my mom had medical issues as well, and she wasn't able to breastfeed me. These things happen. I think it's just when everything's equal and you have the ability to make a choice between something that is proven to be better for your child, you should, I think it's hard. I'm guilty of this. We live in a very self-oriented society where we're thinking about ourselves a lot, and when we look at our kids, there's so much selflessness that's required, right? That's what I'll always be forever grateful to my parents for, just so much selflessness and so many things that they've gave up and sacrificed to raise me and my brother in a loving, safe atmosphere. So I think that is something else that women sort of seem to bear more of the burden on, just because of everything that having kids does to their body and all those choices that we talked about. So again, mad respect, right? Mad respect. And
damn,
now,
imagine pushing something the size of a watermelon out of your body. That's ridiculous, and that should give you bragging rights to be able to say for the rest of that child's life that you suffered through childbirth, and you had to carry them for 9 months. And I think it's amazing. Like it is amazing. I don't know how to describe it. It's not that I'm jealous and want to do it.
Right.
But mad, like I
we'll
said,
draw the
mad
line
respect.
there.
Yeah, mad respect, and yeah.
And now here we are as men, with these little girls, and they're looking up to us. I heard this somewhere, and you'll see it come up in like memes and stuff like that. But like, you are sort of the first example of a man to your daughters, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't that kind of scary?
It's awesome, and I love that, because I want to set that bar as high as I can, because
it's such a huge responsibility.
Yeah, but that's okay though. It's your responsibility. You know what I mean? And I think it's awesome. I mean, I always joke, I make all the jokes. I have the T-shirt that says, dads against daughters dating.
Yeah.
I have that shirt, and I already had the conversation about I'm not going to keep a shotgun. I'm actually going to have 2 crossbows with laser pointers, because they're easier to aim and they're not lethal. So I can just shoot the legs and make sure that they can't run away. I make the jokes, like I'm.
You're gonna have 2, because you're not even gonna worry about having to take another shot. You want to take the shot at the same time for both of them.
Yep, move over, Katniss Everdeen. I'm gonna be like the crossbow double master here. It's gonna be awesome.
Isn't it crazy to think about that one day your little girls are gonna come over and there's gonna be some dude there?
It's weird. I joke about being whatever, but that's cool. I just hope that I know how I was when I was a kid, right? And I know, that I'm going to breach that guy code at some point and divulge all the secrets to them, right? But it's really, they're going to make their own choices. Hopefully we empower them to make the right ones. I don't think that it needs to be something that they're shy about. I mean, I have that kind of open liberal mentality that, your body is not taboo. Sexuality is not taboo. It's not like we're letting them watch stuff on TV or talking about it. But you know what? It's a body. Everybody has boobs, and everybody has genitalia. So let's get over that. Mm-hmm. So as far as like them having a boyfriend and kissing and things that come after that, like right now, because it's not happening, maybe I'm being kind of idealistic and being like, yeah, that's cool. We'll deal with that when we get there. But I'm more concerned about, the stuff that comes around it, right? Like the breakups, he doesn't like me, that feeling like it's their fault something doesn't work out when it might not be, body shaming. I hate that. I mean, the bullying that goes along with it, like the pressures that come with it, having to send, sexting, all the stuff these kids are doing these days, right? The kids and their sexting, to me, that's more worrisome. It's like, how do we navigate the world without, changing the course of that moral compass or that upbringing? How can we get through that? I mean, and the boys and the stuff, that's gonna happen, or girls or whatever they decide to do,
So have you thought about what your stance is going to be on social media and on technology during the years that you are allowed to have that say, right? I mean, obviously there's going to come a time when they're going to be old enough, but I mean, you're very quickly approaching a time where you're going to have to make the rules around that.
Yeah, I mean, and given that, I work in ad tech, right? I need to be connected. I need to know about all these things. It's funny because we just had a PTA meeting about that yesterday. And me and my wife have always been very clear on, device usage is limited. We didn't really placate anything with an iPad. You know what I mean? Like some parents, that works for you. I'm not going to judge. But, we didn't just shove an iPad in their face when we wanted them to be occupied, So thankfully, they enjoy it. I let them play Angry Birds once in a while just for the fun of it, because I want them to be comfortable with technology, and I want them to, I do basic HTML and CSS programming. So I show them, they see me working on a computer. They know that it's a instrument of creation, right? They see me make music. They see me make videos. So I want them to be aware of it, and I want them to understand it just beyond just being a consumer of it. But that said, no cell phone, that's going to be a long time from now. Social media, forget it. I'm gonna figure out a way to how to throttle traffic from the router directly for all devices in my house. Because you know what, I'm gonna watch her like a hawk. And my wife, I love that she's when I'm, the minute we decided to be together, 15 years ago, we were on the same page about all this stuff, and we were going to be as militant as we could about that. Checking the backpacks, make sure they're not sneaking stuff out. Things like that, like that they, all the stuff we try to get away with when we were kids. we're gonna kick it back to them. So I guess rounding back to it, technology is a tool. You need to be aware of it. You need to know how it works. I think that being a consumer is good, but really diving deeper and going into more of the usefulness of it and why they're there is, and what purpose they really should serve. And it shouldn't be a replacement for time spending with, you shouldn't use it as a replacement for interaction with your kid. You shouldn't use it as a replacement for, for having to teach them something yourself. It shouldn't be a replacement for anything. It should just be a tool.
Totally. No, I think that's a great, healthy approach. I think we're in a very interesting situation, our generation. I think we are really the first generation that has to worry about setting these rules. Our parents grew up and this wasn't around when they were growing up. This sort of all hit when we were in high school, and then it sort of exploded when we were in university and stuff like that. But for the first time, we are the ones that have to make those rules about what happens at your home when it's dinner time. And, do we leave the TV? Well, TV was there before, but, do you check your phone? How often do you check your phone? I'm struggling with a lot of this right now, setting those rules for myself and then also for my kids because, do as I say, not as I do is only going to work for so long, right? And they're taking away so much of what they're observing and stuff like that. So, and everyone else is just grappling with the same thing, and everyone is so different, and those questions are coming, well, why can't I have a cell phone? Jill has a cell phone. Well, we do things different than Jill's parents and stuff like that. So that's going to be a lot of very interesting conversations. And I just hope, my hope is that I'm able to give them, because they're already asking, my daughter is already asking why. And I'm sure your daughters are asking why all the time, right? It's like, oh, we have to go, the store's closing. Why? And on and on. So I just hope that we're able to tell them, give them good enough reasons for these things that they understand why we're doing certain things so that they don't have to feel bad about the fact that they maybe aren't allowed to, be on the iPad as much as they want and stuff like that.
But is it really the end of the world that we tell our kids no, and it's because I say so? Hasn't that really worked for the bulk of civilized humanity? That the parent, is the authoritarian of your little family fiefdom. And, didn't we earn the right to be able to say that to our kids after having to endure that ourselves? Is that okay? Isn't that okay? Like, parents aren't supposed to be your friends, right? They can become your friends later as an adult. And hopefully you do have that luck and you have, you become a friend. Like, again, my dad maybe didn't set the best example as a husband, but he was a fantastic dad. You know what I mean? I aspired to be the kind of dad that he was to me, despite everything. So, you gotta just set those rules and make sure that things feel good. I mean, you are the parent. You need to be a parent. You need to say no. You need to say, well, that's just the way it is. It's because we got to. You want to eat, don't you? You want to do this, don't you? I think that our generation, wants to be cool, cool parents. We all want to be cool parents. We don't want to be those parents. But ultimately, there's a value in being a little bit of that parent. So, and honestly, to answer the question, no phones at the dinner table. And we're not overly religious, like we said, we're kind of have that Catholic upbringing. But you know what? Whenever I'm here, we hold hands and we say a prayer. We just give thanks for having the food, and we go around the table and say, we bless people, family. If Veterans Day, I'm sure today we'll be thanking veterans. We just express some gratitude, and I think that's huge. It's important. That's important for people to just take the time. Social media is going to be there. Facebook's going to be there. It's not going to fall apart if you're not checking it every 5 minutes. So take that 20 minutes and half an hour that you have for a meal, hopefully, or, sit around, even if you don't have that, make the time to just sit and talk to your kid. I think that's huge. They'll listen. They want it. They want you to talk to them.
I totally agree. And going back to what you're saying, like what's wrong with just being that authoritarian, or not the authoritarian, but having that authority. I wonder, though, have things changed? Are things different now that there are so many more, media pointed at them, so many more sort of opinions and ways of going about things that are coming at them all the time that they have access to? Whether that changes the light in which they see you in. So again, 50 years ago, this is what mom and dad said. This is how it was. You sort of got a taste of what Billy's Billy does it like, or his parents do it like, because you maybe went to Billy's house once or you heard about it in school. But now you have access to all these things coming at you. You go on the internet and there are messages coming at you from all sorts of angles about all sorts of different things. Does that change things, or do we as parents still have that ultimate authority?
I mean, obviously it changes things, right? I mean, but you should have that authority as a parent. I think it doesn't matter how much noise there is. I think that making your family unit, the core of your belief system or structure or understanding is important. Again, my opinion, right? Just one schmuck in Florida who's saying this. But, I think it's our duty to make sure that they understand that the world might be noisy, right? But ultimately, you can only listen to one thing at a time, and it's something that is my job to try to tell you what that one thing is. And if you want to ask me, or when we're older, and you want to question or ask or wonder, and you need to be able to look at them in the face and say, "Hey, I did the best I could. You're alive. You're healthy. You've made it through. You've had a life of privilege. You've lived in the first world, and you have an education, and you got to go to Disneyland and watch cable TV and have toys. And when were you hungry? You know what I mean? Like all these things. There's a lot of noise out there, and you just need to be able to, to just listen to one thing at a time."
Totally agree. And hopefully we remain, that most important voice, that most important message, because there's going to be so much of it, right?
Yeah. And maybe we won't be the most impactful or important or inspiring, right? We don't need to be, their professional role model or role model for life in general. Just, you got to give them the good foundation. And without that good foundation, they won't be able to find those other voices that might inspire him, right? Because I'm sure Stephen Hawking is a much better motivation, a bigger inspiration than I could be if my kid's into, quantum physics. But I want to create an environment where it's okay for her to ask about that, and for me to give her the 3 Stephen Hawking books that I've been holding on to for, since university, and, show them a movie or show them a video, encourage that, and so I think that's our role. We're enablers. We're enablers to make them help them find whatever it is that they want to try.
I love that idea, actually, because I often thought about, all the awesome things that I love exploring in the world, but that I may not necessarily be good at. But I like that idea of enabling them to discover those things, and then, them being able to dig deeper into something that they really like. Because at the end of the day, it's up to us, how many things they're exposed to, right? Whether you take them, you travel with them, or you read to them, that's all up to us, I guess.
It's huge, man. It's huge. The reading, that's the thing. That's something that maybe in our media fueled society we forget, but reading to your kid is so huge. It is. Like, just taking the time to sit there with a book and reading a little story to them is huge. So if you're struggling and you feel like you can't figure out how to spend some quality time, man, that's an easy way to do it, I take my kids to the library every week. You know what I mean? I haven't been to the library in 20 years, probably, or maybe not that much, but we have a library down the road, and we've been going for the last 2 months. Every weekend, every Saturday we go, we pick up a few books, and we read together, and it's huge. So it doesn't have to be a big, scary, noisy world. You know what I'm worried about? I'm more worried about the fear factor of TV and all these messages coming their way. Like, people are always complaining that kids don't go outside to play. I don't know if that happens in Canada, but here is a huge thing, right? Parents are afraid to let their kids out of their house because there's so many bad people out there, and so if that's what's happening, you're afraid to let your kids go out. What else are you going to do but shove an iPad or a TV in front of them, Totally. And is that any better? Or, is it really that you just don't want to go outside and play with your kid? Are you too tired from work? What is it? Like, what is the real reason? Because, I'll sit outside even when I don't want to, I grab a chair and I sit there and watch them run around or play with their, ride their bikes, or even if it's just go sit there and get some sun. And even, sometimes, hungover on a Sunday morning, you don't want to do that, but you got to do stuff like that, and that's what I'm more worried about. Is like missing that connection and the divide between the reality and the fear, and succumbing to that. I think if anything, that's the scariest thing about the society we live in for me.
I think that one is one that I've thought about before, and I've had a lot of discussions with my wife about it and with my parents. And I think for me, it comes down to sort of discerning the message of the media, and also sort of understanding how it all works behind the scenes, as in, the cable channels need to get eyeballs, headlines need to sell newspapers and things like that, because I would bet that we are no worse off today in terms of child abductions per capita, or whatever it is, than we were 50 years ago. But I think it seems that way because there is a lot more messaging. We now have, we check our news more often. We see these scary things, and I think it seems like we're worse off, but I don't think we are. And I think it makes us scared, like you said.
Yeah.
I like you, I definitely don't want my kids to be, afraid of the world. I think you have to be smart, but you shouldn't be afraid. And yeah, I mean, as an 8-year-old kid, I used to walk to and from school by myself. I mean, there are so many people now that would be so scared of that, right?
Yeah. I mean, and trust me, I'm the first one to look around. I'm the first one to be, vigilant. I'm the first one to check the door 3 times. I'm the one that looks around for, safety holes, like I get that. And that's what my role is, to make sure that they're safe, right? But I also don't want them to be afraid of the world. Yeah, I agree with you.
There's an interesting analogy that comes to my mind, which is I think they look at us to see our reactions. Our kids look at us and they learn from our reactions. Since they start to sort of crawl and toddle and bump their heads and skin their knees, if you observe a kid, I will guarantee you that 9 out of 10 times when they bump their heads or fall down, the first thing they do is they look up at you or the adult that's with them to see their reaction. Mm-hmm. And they, based on that, they judge how serious the situation is. And sometimes your reaction, or not sometimes, I would argue most of the time, your reaction makes the difference between huge tears and a big thing, or like, oh, you're okay, and you quickly have to judge that as a parent, obviously, because if your kid's tooth is missing, there's obviously things you need to do. But if they just fell down or something while starting to, they're starting to walk or whatever, if your approach to it is, oh, it's okay, things are okay, you create that atmosphere, they are less afraid. And then the minute, every time you're reacting like, oh my God, mm-hmm. then the kid starts to see those things and they start to become more afraid of things, I think.
I agree wholeheartedly. Again, you and I are on the same page about a lot of this stuff. And it's you're lucky when you find somebody and you choose to be with somebody, like I have with my wife, that we agree. Oh, you fell down. Okay. Well, are you bleeding? Is anything broken? No, then get up, go clean it off. Put on a Band-Aid if you want. The Band-Aid cures everything, right?
Oh, especially Frozen themed Band-Aids.
Oh, of course. Or Barbies. Or Hello Kitties. Those are popular.
Right now my daughter's all about the Frozen.
Man, that Frozen train is just nonstop.
We're into our second year or so of this, aren't we? As a society.
Yeah, and it could be worse, I guess, right? I mean, it's not that bad. So the music's decent. It's not like it's a boring show tune. At least it's kind of interesting songwriting there, and the animation's really impressive, and it's a story about sisterhood, which is cool, I mean,
especially in your case, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I have Anna and Elsa here. I live with Anna and Elsa.
Right.
So
have you done the Halloween costumes?
We did. We bought them last year. We bought them costumes. Not, I don't think it was for Halloween officially, but they had the costumes. They got them for Christmas or for their birthday or something. So they have that. Yeah. But
I was Kristoff this year.
Oh, nice. I had my really good friend was Kristoff. I never had to do that. I never had to do the dress up.
Okay. Yeah, my daughter requested it, so as soon as she was told she could be Elsa, she insisted that my wife be Anna and that I be Kristoff, which was very cute, so we had to oblige. Oh, and my son was Olaf, so we had the whole thing, the whole family. No, I completely agree with you. There's nothing wrong with positive stories, and, in a way, I recently, actually going back to this Band-Aid thing, I recently discovered that it also allows you to have tools which you can better parent with. All of a sudden, the Frozen Band-Aid thing was a real thing that happened last week. It was a reward. It was a reward for, behaving in a way which we would like her to behave in. And and all of a sudden, this extension, this merchandising of that movie becomes a way in which you can parent properly, better, So I think it's positive. I don't mean anything negative about it.
Sure.
It's really interesting how those things become such behemoths, right? And, we'll certainly see a sequel, and who knows.
It's coming. It's coming. There's the sequel that's in the works. They just released recently a short, part of a short collection on Netflix. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a ride coming for Disney soon. I think they're putting it in Epcot. Down
wow. Here. Okay.
So it's not stopping anytime soon.
That's going to be a pilgrimage that we will make one day as a family.
Yeah, let me know. We'll meet up.
For sure. Cool. Well, let's do a little break. I'm gonna introduce everyone to your musical exploits.
Oh boy.
So I've listened to a lot of your stuff, and a few caught my ear, but it was cool that you just let me know recently that Nasan is a 2-part song, so that's pretty cool. So maybe what we'll do is we'll start off with part 1 now, and then we'll play part 2 at the end of the episode.
Sounds good.
Here it goes.
And me, so say the stars, it's meant to be. My heart is for you, my soul is too. I pledge my life, one day you'll be my wife. I swear this much is true. Oh, I don't wanna love no one but you. Hold it, she fell for it. She thinks I'm in love. No, son, just here for fun. Sex is the only thing I love, 'cause I'm that dude. Yeah, I'm that dude. 'Cause I'm that dude. I'm that dude. Well, it's Friday night and I'm all alone, so I pick up the phone. Hey, Tiffany.
Hey.
Yeah, it's me. I know it's been a while since I called.
Yeah, I totally missed you.
Well, my dog died and I lost my job. And I'm out here on the
I'll be right over
so
there.
baby, please, could you come and comfort me? I'm about to lose my head. Hold it, she fell for it again. She thinks I'm in
And there it was. So you are involved in no less than 2 sort of musical projects. Is that right?
No less than 2, correct.
And so there we have Rise of Saturn, correct?
Yep, Rise of Saturn, yeah.
Yep, and Red Light Stare, which, by the way, I think is an awesome band name. Because when I think about the stare you might have when you're at a red light, there are so many different types of red light stare that one can have. Did you guys have one in mind, like the sort of I'm going to race you stare, or the like zoning out stare, or was there one particular one you guys were thinking of when you came up with that?
I wish it was that poetic. I think it's more that I'm exhausted from the day and I'm just going to sit here and stare at the light and just not think about anything for anything for a minute. Yeah.
I got it wrong then.
No, hey, it could be. It's open to interpretation, like all art, right?
So how did all these projects come about? Which one was your first, and who are you involved with doing this stuff?
So I guess we'll go back a little bit. In university, I started a band. That band was called Soulfound. It was kind of a rock, kind of like ballsy rock, Iron Maiden meets Stone Temple Pilots kind of band. It was all over the place. And that through that process, I met one of my best friends, my drummer, Disco. Shout out to Disco. Hopefully he's listening. And Disco and I, he's kind of my musical girlfriend. I call him my musical girlfriend because
like
him and I have been together for so long. And after Soulfound broke up about a decade in, I started the Red Light Stare side project just to finish out some ideas that I had that I wanted to play in Soulfound. And him being my drummer of choice, my joint at my hip, him and I just kind of developed a lot of those songs together. So it became an extension of that project. So Red Light Stare is just for fun. We recorded a couple years ago. Whenever we get together a couple of times a year, we jam. We have a bunch of song ideas. We've played maybe a handful of shows. I like to bring in a whole new lineup every time we do a show, so I get to ask all my friends to learn all my songs and put up with me being a diva for a few shows, for a few hours, a few practices, and it's fun. So that's kind of always there, but it's not very active. I don't have time to be in a band anymore. Parenting and working and not being hungover on Saturday or Sunday is kind of a big deal.
That's tough. That used to be easier when we were younger.
Yeah, I mean, you could just lounge around all day, but I can't do that anymore.
Well, not only that, but I remember going to work, like, you'd go party, you'd stay out till 3 or whatever, and then at 8 in the morning, you'd go to work or something. If you were, in my case, I was doing part-time at a department store. And it just didn't seem to be that big of a deal. Now it just kills. I don't know. Maybe it's because you're sort of forced to wake up every morning at 7 a.m. whether you like it or not. But
yep. Yeah, I think that's more what it is. And it's not just you, because when I go by myself somewhere, I can party till 3 in the morning and wake up at 8 in the morning and be okay for the most part, right? You learn your balances and what you can and can't mix, right?
Yeah.
And you know what to do at the end of the night. Take your leave, take your glass of water, eat a little bit, whatever works for you, right? But I think it's just that you got to be on for these kids. They're gonna be the first people that look at you in the morning, and you can't look like shit. You can't look like you've been, that you slept in an ashtray.
Yeah.
You can't. It can't be. They can't find you passed out in the bathroom.
Right.
Hopefully they don't. So. But yeah, so anyway, so out of the ashes of all that, Rise of Saturn is actually Disco is also in Rise of Saturn with me. But it's the 3 other guys in the band, Paul, Brad, and Eric. Actually, Eric is Canadian, by the way.
Oh.
A little bit for you there. And they used to be in another band that we used to play with all the time. As when I was in Soulfound, they were in their band Weak Sauce. We used to play together all the time. Then they broke up. Then we broke up, and we just kind of started playing together. And that's Rise of Saturn. How many years later? 7 years later, and it's fun. Most of us are married. All but one are married. 3 out of the 5 of us have a kid or 2, and it's fun for us. We have fun. We just write silly music and write about video games and TV shows and all kinds of random things, and we like to jam. We like to get adventurous, and there's no real expectation other than just enjoying each other's company and what we create together. So. And
do you guys do shows as well?
Yeah, that we used to do a lot, more frequently, but now it's maybe 3-4 times a year that we get to play. We play at a place here in Dunedin called the Dunedin Brewery, the world famous Dunedin Brewery. Brad works there, so it's easy for us to get there. We play maybe 2 shows a year there, 2-3 shows a year. And that becomes kind of our fun gathering, bring out our friends, and we all go and have some beers and have a good time.
And are you actively, like, have you guys released any albums, or are you trying to sort of take it into any commercial direction?
Commercial direction, not really. We all were chasing that before with Soulfound. I mean, it was my passion. We toured. We were on TV shows. We had licensing deals. We never really got a big record deal and made any money. But chasing that for a decade kind of got really taxing. So when that was done, I wasn't gonna pay for studio time anymore. I just record stuff myself for the most part. We get played on the radio here, like a local radio on a Sunday night show, and that's enough. I mean, if somebody, I just like creating the music. I like putting it out there. I like my friends that, tolerate my my exploits, and they listen to it and maybe buy it or support a Kickstarter campaign. But with Rise of Saturn, we put out a full length album. I think it was 2008 or 9. That we used Kickstarter for, and that was actually one of the first Kickstarter projects in town here that musicians had done. So we got a nice little write-up in the paper for that, and we released a 5-song EP last year too. So it's not a lot of volume creation there in music. We have a bunch of song ideas. We just don't have the time to just do that, And in between now, here and then, I've been in other projects and I've done other things. So the little bit of time that I do get to devote to music is kind of all over the place. So
take me back to where it all started for you in your life. Music, the love for music. Was that from your parents?
When I was in the womb,
I like that. I wasn't expecting you to go that far back. That's good. I like it.
No, I can, again, I don't remember, but this is how it went down. September, I believe, of 1980, around there. Chick Corea, who's a jazz fusion musician. I don't know if you know who he is. Chick Corea came to Dominican Republic, and my dad and his brother, they had a record store, and I mean, my mom grew up playing guitar. She could play classical guitar, and my dad loved music. He couldn't play, but he loved it. So together, the genes were there. They brought me this Chick Corea concert, and I was kicking, and the whole time this crazy jazz fusion music is going on, and I'm in there just rocking out. And after the show, they went backstage. They got to meet Chick, and Chick touched my mom's belly, and I think that's when the seed was planted.
That's so crazy.
And then after that, man, I mean, I grew up in it. Like I said, there's a record store in my family, so of course I was there, listening to all kinds of stuff. And between MTV and just being around music, and there's always a guitar around. I took piano lessons. My brothers, the next in line, the second one in the line, he got into drums early on. So him and I would jam. We would make instruments out of pots and pans, and it was amazing. And then I discovered, Metallica and Guns N' Roses, and it became about showmanship, and about just, being this persona, and it just kept going from there. I mean, I was always a good student. I was always kind of nerdy and got great grades, and that kind of allowed me to do the other things. So, I mean, I've been in bands since I was 12 years old. I've been, I've had an instrument in my hand in some way or another for the last, 25 years. So,
how do you discover new music today?
Spotify. I love Spotify. I love that Spotify knows my tastes. That Discover Weekly playlist is always on point. But my friends, my musician buddies, we're always trading music. I always get introduced to a lot of new stuff from them. I have a lot of friends that just have that have cool tastes, and I always ask them what they're listening to. But for my own discovery, usually Spotify is my go-to.
And what do you find yourself listening to mostly these days?
It's all over the place. I do like that kind of like 90s grunge revival thing that's going on now. Like I do like that new Kurt Vile record. Has that feel to it. I love indie rock. I love listening to like the more electro indie rock stuff like Phantogram and Metric. Like those female vocalists are always really cool in those kind of scenarios. Beach House. But I listen to some electronic music here and there. I listen to some folk music here and there. A lot of R&B. I love R&B. I love that kind of stuff. So, so much good music out there. Black Joe Lewis and the Honey Bears is probably currently in my CD player. I just finished listening to Fleetwood Mac and then listening to Hall & Oates, and music is everywhere. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
What about for the girls? Are you getting them to start on any instruments right now?
Yeah, we're doing drum lessons once a week. So, but they've been around it. I always get them to sing on stuff when I'm doing demos at the house. They've sang on a bunch of stuff for me. I let them kind of beat on my keyboards. I have drums. I'm like the ideal parent, right? I have 2 drum sets in the garage, and I love loud noises, and I don't mind them to be repetitive. Like, usually kids are like their parents don't want to hear it. I'm like, yes, go in there, please make more noise.
And I take it your wife is on with you on this.
Yes, that's one of those things that she does not have a choice on. You compromise on a lot of things, but that one, I won that one. So,
right.
And I think she likes that. I mean, that's how we met. It was through music that we got together. That we went through a lot of years playing all kinds of bars all over the place, and she knows how hard I worked for it, and it didn't happen. But hey, it's all right. So she knows that I'm going to be a musician for life. And she, again, hey, can't complain. It's not like I'm out working, I'm not a bartender, that just is gone all the time and playing and all this stuff. I'm a professional man with a real job, and there's security there, and she knows that I would never compromise that for that. But she also knows that I need that music to stress relief, to kind of cut loose a little bit and get down with it.
So how does a guy who's touring and a musician at heart end up doing sort of digital marketing, cutting edge, but business stuff?
Yeah, it goes hand in hand, man. I think every musician's faced with that when you start losing your hair. And you start losing your hair, you start hurting a little bit, you start getting a little pudgy. You realize that there's probably more longevity in learning about business. So I was always, for the most part in all my bands, I've been the business guy anyways. I booking the gigs, making the flyers, making all the marketing stuff. So I had to learn a lot of it. I learned Photoshop that way, to make flyers. I learned about, you learn about social media. When that came out, mp3.com was like the biggest thing ever. We used to do guerrilla campaigns back in university, to get people to our shows. We faked our own outraged feminist protest one time to get people to shows. Yeah.
Okay.
That was a fun one.
So did you then tell folks at the show that it was fake, or
no? Why? Why?
Nobody ever found out that it was staged?
I don't think anybody cared. Yeah, it was hilarious. It was great. It was guerrilla marketing at its best, I think. But then, yeah. But that evolved into learning about SEO, and that learned into paid search, and learning about display, and learning about affiliate marketing, and PR and all this stuff. And one thing led to another, and email marketing. I used to do our email lists and maintain that, and create the HTML for that. So I had to learn coding, and I did our website. I learned about all that. So I mean, it's been because of music. I am a marketer, right? Like, so I'm thankful for that.
Well, and I don't doubt that it helps you in other areas of your life. I love just being near and talking to people in the arts, or musicians, artists, all that. It's so refreshing for me. So I've really enjoyed our conversation. That's awesome. I coming from somebody that was never really exposed to music like that, I really appreciate all that. I want to expose my kids to that more so. I want to put them in all sorts of lessons and things like that. I maintain that for a guy, if you can play an instrument, and then ideally if you can dance a little bit, you could probably have any girl you want. Don't you think?
My experience will say yes. That is true. That is a truism of life. If you can play guitar and sing a little bit, the singing really goes a long way. Because just playing guitar is okay. But if you can sing a little, or at least try, and you can dance, yeah, you're in.
Yeah, right on. That's awesome. And then it's just having hobbies, right, outside of work, and something that you can sort of put some passion to get excited about, right? It sort of keeps you going. Totally.
I gotta use that. It keeps me out of trouble, I guess. Let's just say that.
Okay, yeah. Well, we all need a little bit of that.
Yeah.
So here we are on a podcast. You said you also that's something else that you really enjoy. You enjoy listening to podcasts.
Yeah. With ever since I started commuting, an hour each way for this job 2 years ago, I just can't stop listening to podcasts. I mean, I started with public radio, just listening to that. I know we talked about I get a Q down here for the CBC show, and that was, I think, one of my favorite shows when I first started listening. Giancomeshi, you're still the man.
I agree. I do hope that he resurfaces at some point, his legal troubles aside, and you know what? Yes,
of course.
He should face the law if he broke the law, if he hurt anybody, he should face the consequences. But man, what a show that was.
Agreed. I mean, again, I 100% agree with you. Just, if there was wrongdoing, you definitely should pay the price, but it still doesn't take away the fact that he was amazing at his job and he made a great show that I love listening to every day. So.
And so, how do you discover podcasts? How do you listen? Because right now it's a very fragmented environment. This is one of the biggest problems right now for it growing. It's growing, but it's sort of growing in all these different areas. It's hard for people to access. Many people don't even know what it is.
Yeah, I think it's part of the same problem that the music business has in general, right? There's so many. Anybody can make one, and everybody can put one out. But how do you get people's attention? It's not like there's an MTV for podcasts that'll tell you what podcasts to listen to. But for me, it's just I started with things related to public radio. So I would listen to Radio Lab a lot. That was kind of like the first one that I got into. Then I went into Freakonomics Radio, which is I was a fan of the book and the movies. And that went down the list from there. Stuff you should know, stuff you miss in history. I got into Serial finally. I kind of got that going. Star Talk with Neil deGrasse Tyson. That's great. It just kind of keeps from there. Like you listen to one and then you hear something advertised. Like I heard The Message being advertised on Star Talk. So I
check that one out.
I checked The Message. It's okay. I like the idea. It's kind of like a War of the Worlds, sci-fi-ish kind of thing. And it's a little too staged. You can tell, but I like it because I'm a sci-fi nerd. So, but yeah, I mean, there's, sometimes I don't want to listen to people talk, but when I do, there's so much good stuff out there. So much quality content. Hidden Brain, that new NPR podcast, also is really good. Yeah, and I just kind of go through sometimes, and because the thing is that you can't listen to too many, right? If you want to keep up with them, if somebody's putting out content every week, there's only so much time you can devote to that. So going too far and too wide might get a little distracting. But yeah,
and to curate your assortment, like I added so many at one point, and I feel like I got to go back and see which ones I'm actually listening to, because you end up with so many, and you run your update, and you're just overwhelmed, and the good stuff gets lost, right? What do you use from a technology standpoint? Are you listening to them off your phone?
Yep.
And what are you using as a program to do that?
Just a stock Apple Podcasts app.
So iTunes, right?
Yeah, iTunes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That seems, if there isn't a standard right now, but if there is a prevailing way that people are getting them, it's through iTunes, I find.
Yeah, it's easy. It's there. It comes with your phone. There's so low barrier to entry. You just go in the iTunes store and just search for content.
Yeah. Android is still, that place where it sort of has to standardize. Google just came out a couple of weeks ago and said they're going to start adding them to Google Music. Not available in Canada yet, but down there in the States for you guys. I think it's already happening. So for those people using Androids, that's another way. But there's never really been a shortage of programs. I use a great app for my Android called Podcast Addict. And, top rated, like no problem, super easy. I just think it's going to take some time before people actually sort of get their heads around the idea of RSS feeds and stuff like that. But once you plug those feeds in, it's super easy. You run your update, you see what's new, you click play, you can download it, you can stream it. So hopefully, and then, as technology sort of starts becoming more prevalent in places like people's cars, where, you start getting, you can already get satellite radio and stuff like that, but when you can actually stream podcasts in your car and things like that, I think more and more people are going to start to be exposed to it. Any sort of podcast you want to let people know about that could be cool, either from whether it's music or anything really?
I mean, out of all those, I think those are all worthwhile. For me, the one that I really enjoy, I guess the two I enjoy the most are definitely Radiolab and Freakonomics Radio, just because it just appeals to my sensibilities of wanting to see the world in different ways. They always do a really good job. They have really compelling stories. I love that they take a while to develop all these episodes and always have interesting people on there. So I think it's good. And it's short. It's like usually 45 minutes, on average. So that's the other thing is I try to stick to podcasts that are around that time because that's my commute time, and I can't leave it undone, and I don't want to sit in my car for an extra half an hour to finish the episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something that I kind of look for there. But definitely, if you haven't listened to Radiolab or Freakonomics Radio, those are great, good quality podcasts. And for what it's worth, of course.
Thank you. I struggle with that time thing because I love like the conversation we're having, and I would never want to sort of stop it prematurely. There's things that I'm pondering, like maybe cutting it into episode, like our conversation could become 3 parts or something like that. But it's definitely.
Who the hell wants to listen to me for 3 episodes?
If the internet has taught us anything, it's that there's an audience for everything out there.
That's true.
But what are your thoughts on the marketing as it relates to podcasting? Because what we're seeing now in all these podcasts, especially the bigger ones, is the sponsorship models. They've got their pre-rolls, mid-rolls. I've even seen guys do it at the end of their episode, giving shout-outs to their sponsors. A lot of them are using unique promo codes, go to stamps.com and put in Freakonomics and stuff like that. Do you think it's sustainable?
As long as you have an audience, yeah. I think that's a fair way to trade, make some money for your content. It's all about the audience, right? So you have to do the hard work up front. That's what I tell bloggers whenever I talk to them is you have to do the hardest job, which is building your audience. It's your voice and it's your hook that's going to keep people coming back. And without that, you have no ground to ask anybody for money. So if, step one is really building the audience and making sure you have a clear brand, a clear purpose so that people can kind of hook into it. Make sure that you do the basics, make sure you're doing a good job with creating that consistent opening, that people become accustomed to hearing, and putting the social media links out there, really working social media to get people's input and create a community. But then once you get that and you got people listening, I think I love how a lot of the shows do it. They just take a break. They create this kind of native ad conversation around like Stuff You Missed in History does a great job when they're plugging like Nature Box, for example, which is that snack delivery service. Okay. And they talk about the snacks, how much they like this snack and this snack, how they and they just go through all the benefits, and it's very organic. And I listen to it because I trust these people to give me good content, and I get that they got to pay the bills and make some money, so I'll listen to it. And I'm a marketer, so I'll always take your survey. I'll always answer your questions. I will always watch the commercial. You know what I mean? So maybe I'm not the ideal, but I think it's the easiest way to do it. I think you throwing a plug in for stamps.com keeps you going, then make it work.
For sure. And you're right in saying that when they do it in an entertaining way, it's almost seamless. Joe Rogan does a really good job on his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience. He sort of makes it seem like he's reading a script, but he does it in sort of like an ironic, funny way. And so you can tell that, there's a little bit of a twist on it where, these guys, a lot of these people making these podcasts, podcasting is such a grassroots thing, right? I'm sure there are tons of people that are like, oh, you're selling out, man. But you know what, like you said, like at some point you want to, if you're getting enough people to listen, it's right for you to want to make some money off it. It's fine. But there are many interesting ways that you can do it, right? It doesn't have to be that like standard, I'm reading a paragraph that Stamps.com gave me to read or whatever. I actually get paid by Stamps.com, by the way, I think, for this episode, because we've said Stamps.com many, many times already.
Thank you, Stamps.com, for your fantastic service, because I don't like going to the post office.
Have you tried Stamps.com?
I have, actually, when they first came out. Yeah.
Oh, my. Okay, so tell me, because I don't know that we have that here.
No, Canada Post doesn't do that?
No, I don't believe so. So Stamps.com is actually run by the U.S. Postal Service.
That's I never checked that out, but I believe they have to be. They have to be associated somehow since they're handling that. I don't know. They're an approved licensed vendor of the U.S. Postal Service.
Okay.
So.
And the idea is that you can print your own stamps, so you don't actually have to go to.
Yep, pretty much. You go on there, you buy the postage you need, and you print out the stamp, and then you put it on your package and you mail it.
And did you find that it worked well for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very easy transaction. The only, I mean, I haven't used it recently, and I'm sure it's a lot better these days. But you have to, if you have a package has to be weighed, and it matters how much it weighs, then you need to have a scale. So your house becomes like a mini post office, anyways. And I think they send you one if you use certain promo codes. So they have like a starter kit. So they send you the scale, and you weigh your package, and you put it in, and I think it's brilliant. It streamlines a process that's tedious for people. People are coming to your door to pick up your mail anyways. Why not? I think it's great.
And look at them completely embracing this new medium of podcasting. If you go on their website, in the top right-hand corner, they've got a call out for heard us on a radio or podcast. Click here, and you're able to put on your promo code. So they're definitely looking at that, investing in it, which is so cool to see for this medium.
Yeah, I mean, think about who listens to podcasts, though. I mean, that's a pretty ripe
lazy ass people who don't want to go to the office to the post office.
No, but it's like educated, somewhat affluent, probably, or at least gainfully employed professionals, probably for the most part. I don't know. I guess it depends on the podcast, but it seems like it's a pretty sweet demographic that you want to target.
Well, certainly people that know their way around technology, right? If you're listening to a podcast, you probably know how to print your own stamps. Like, it won't be too hard for you to figure out. Yeah,
but I mean, they, all those companies they have Casper mattress company that I hear on a lot of podcasts. Casper, shout out. There's a lot, that Nature Box company, that Me Undies. That's another one that's all over.
I heard
the
of
place.
that one. Yeah.
So whoever the agent is that's going out getting these sponsorship is doing a great job. But why not? I think it's a great demographic to hit, and I think that in a lot of instances, when you're trying to reach a certain, upperly mobile millennial base, why not?
Totally. Cool. Well, listen, Ivan, thanks, man. It's been a trip.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. I'm glad we got to do this.
Me too.
And I'm looking forward to, keeping up with the podcast and learning more. Seriously, I learned so much about Canadian politics in that episode. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. So, shout out to all the homies out there. I forgot their names, but
thank you.
Sid, I think Sid was a conservative.
Yep, he was. There was Paul, and there was Daniel. Yeah.
And Daniel,
so as sort of a follow-up, what ended up happening was the Liberals.
Yeah, Trudeau won.
That's right. So the country is very excited. There's been a lot. He's a young, energetic personality, so a lot of people, it's easy to get infected with that idea of, there's going to be some great things happening. As usual, as politicians do, lots of promises were made. We shall see. One that is often brought up for its shock factor is the legalization of marijuana.
Yep.
Which, is a very interesting topic. I don't know if you have thoughts on it, seeing as how your country is definitely sort of dipping its toes in that space.
Yeah, that's it's an interesting one. Overall, I think the government shouldn't have to tell you what you can and can't use for your own sake. But so in that aspect, that libertarian aspect, I think, people should, if it's not hurting anybody else, I guess it's okay. But I also don't want it to be something that, my kids are walking down the street and there's somebody puffing on a joint right there, and it's kind of a situation. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting one. So.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, it'll be interesting to see whether a country like Canada would be willing to sort of take further steps than the States would, because let's face it, I mean, we often have to follow your lead. It's just the way things work. And yeah, we'll see. But thank you. I appreciate you saying that, because it's often, it's domestic politics, but we're so similar as countries that you get those, you get the same sort of things. I was watching the Republican debate last night. We're all, as a continent, we're thinking about a lot of the same things, right?
Yep, that's exactly what I took away from it. It's funny because you could have easily replaced those names, with
Right.
American politicians, because the conservative mindset is kind of the same. Especially Sid, he kind of had that like center right mentality, fiscal conservative, but is okay with some of the social liberal ideas, right? Like we're
Right.
humans after all. Not, I lean that way. I think him and I probably have similar political leanings. So,
Yeah,
but
and that's where I always say that, when you compare American politics to Canadian politics, even, a conservative in Canada is probably closer to a Democrat in the States, really.
yeah.
But either way, thanks again. And anytime you wanna come back on, or share any of the stuff you're listening to, we'd love to hear about it. And I hope we'll get to see each other again. I know you come up to Toronto on work often, so. And and when we do decide to make our way down to the Magical Kingdom, I'll definitely let you know.
For sure. It's been a pleasure, Adam. Thanks a lot for having me, and good luck with everything.
Thanks, Ivan. Take care.
All right. Cheers.
Bye.
And here's part 2. Nah, son. Rise of Saturn. Remember, you can find Rise of Saturn at riseofsaturn.bandcamp.com, and you can find Red Light Stare at soundcloud.com/IAPENA.
He pulls up to the bar, foot by foot. He exits the car. He's gonna score. Tonight is going down. Sexiest ladies in all the town. Girl number 1 looks like she'll be fun. He shuffles to the side.